What's up, everybody? We're back at it with another week. Happy Monday. Happy to be here. Another week of work to start the new year out. Hopefully, everybody is back in the swing of things. You'll notice probably a little bit of different background and surrounding things because we are getting close to having the new studio finished. It's going to be the end of January, probably. By the end of this week, 99% of it's going to be done, but some stuff we're waiting to come in for the background is going to be cool. I know everybody's saying, are you in a cave? I'm wearing my black lawyer, hoodie. So I know I'm just kind of blending back with my black hair and black beard-ish. You can see the white in my beard even more. But yeah, we got a blurred background kind of behind us because we're just trying to wait until it looks awesome before we show it to everybody. So today we are going to jump back into that Parkland shooter trial. And we really have discussed a lot about this case. And we talked about this judge. The Florida Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers wrote a letter to the Florida bar, making complaints about her. Other lawyers were asking her to be recused from some of their cases. So Judge Scherer eventually steps down from the bench and resigns as a judge. The Florida bar publicly reprimands her. And, we really saw how probably a good person, a good lawyer, a good judge can have a big high-profile case thrown at them, and maybe they weren't ready for it. And maybe that some of the decisions they had to make were more difficult than they were expecting. And a lot of us don't know how we would respond if certain things were put in front of us. So we always remember to give grace. Trial attorneys, trial judges, it's a hard job. A lot's going on. We train for it. We do our best. Sometimes it doesn't turn out the way we want it to, but we always have to handle ourselves a certain way with a certain amount of professionalism and fairness and even temperedness. Even if we're zealously fighting for our clients or judges making difficult decisions. And I think she had a few missteps throughout this trial. We talked about it. We documented it. We did videos on it. It was nothing against her personally. Again, like I said, she could be a very nice person, a very good person. This case just, I think, was a tough one for anybody to swallow. It was tough for us to talk about, especially when we talked about how he ended up getting life and not death and how difficult that was. And what's the point of the death penalty if not for cases like this? So I do think that that's important. That was important discussion at the time, but we never really heard from her, and we didn't know what Judge Scherer thought and why some things transpired the way that they did, why she took certain comments the way that she did and responded that way. And today we have an interview on CBS News Miami with Judge Scherer. And so we're going to, before we look at that interview, actually, I was going to show that interview first, but let me do this first. So Judge Scherer now is a practicing lawyer. And a lot of people ask how this happens. Once you step down from the bench, you're still a lawyer. You don't give up your bar card, but let's see what she's doing. So we know she was a state attorney, a prosecutor before, and that's who she was hugging at the end of the trial were the prosecutors. She probably worked with them in the past. If you can't read it, don't worry. I'm going to read it to you. So when she went out on her own, what was she going to do? Well, she is working for the law firm Conrad and Scherer. And if we look at the attorneys real quick, we see her dad, I believe, William Scherer Jr., John Scherer, probably also related to her, William Scherer III, probably her brother would be my guess, because Scherer Jr. would be the second, and then the third. And then we see Elizabeth Scherer. So quite a few Scherers here in the Conrad and Scherer firm. So she is now here as a partner, which is interesting, right? You can join a firm as of counsel, as an associate, or as a partner. She joins as a partner after stepping down at the bench, and they go through her resume, and it's a good resume. She was a prosecutor for a decade, 75 jury trials, specialized in prosecuting violent habitual offenders. In addition to her extensive experience in the criminal realm, she also boasts expertise in the family court, civil litigation, criminal litigation, and other specialized areas of law. Her multifaceted background and relentless pursuit of justice make her a formidable advocate for her clients in a wide range of legal disputes. But then she was appointed as a circuit court judge by Governor Rick Scott. Her legal acumen expanded significantly. She adeptly presided over a range of high-profile cases across a diverse legal sectors, including the widely publicized Parkland shooter case, which spanned 5 years and 7 months and was broadcast live on national news, showcasing her exceptional skill in handling complex and sensitive legal matters. And now she'll use that blend of experience as a prosecutor and a judge to offer, and this offers clients a significant advantage in hiring her. She's also committed to the community, and she takes an active interest in helping other people. So I think that's important. Her education is not updated yet. She is admitted in Florida. So this is what she's doing now. People are saying, I'm muted. Is that correct? No, I'm not muted. Somebody said I was muted, but I don't think I am. It freaks me out. Freaks me out when you guys tell me I'm muted. So, and I see a lot of people saying, I liked this judge. I didn't dislike her overall. I did like her overall as well. I thought there was a few missteps. And I think one of the important things is to talk about those missteps and she would see what she says about them. And I do think that that is what we get from this interview. Okay. I think that's really important. And I will tell you, most clients, when they are looking for lawyers, if they see a lawyer was a judge, that is a benefit. We saw it in the Take Care of Maya case. One of the defense attorneys was a judge. So it is kind of an interesting experience to have a prosecutor, a judge, and especially of a high profile case. Some people may like how she handled it. Some people may not. My guess is lay people on average could understand how she acted the way she did and why she acted the way she did. Even if even if legally speaking, it's not appropriate for a judge to act in a partial way. And yes, I agree. She had a very hard job. So let's take a look now at the interview I mentioned off the top, and let's hear what she has to say about some of the difficulties in this trial and handling this case and the lawyers and parties involved.
The judge who presided over the Parkland school shooting trial is breaking her silence and talking about the case for the very first time. Former Judge Elizabeth Scherer, she resigned last year following backlash over how she handled the case. In my exclusive interview, she goes in depth on what happened in the courtroom during this historic case.
This is the boss man.
Yeah. Former Judge Elizabeth Scherer is surrounded by family in this law firm her father founded nearly 50 years ago.
This is my mom, Ann, and she's the lady who's really in charge.
This is where she now practices.
So father, I think multiple brothers or maybe a cousin and mom, all working at the law firm. I can relate. I understand how law firms like that work. Lots of law firms become family type of businesses with other people mixed in as well. Especially as it grows, you have some family, some friends, some extended family, some people you've worked with in the past that you can trust, because there's so much shadiness in the law and as a law firm. So you can understand, especially people handling your books, how it's family members sometimes. And there's a lot of trust dealing with the things we have to deal with in a law firm. And you can see when you look at Murdaugh and at Girardi, how easily and quickly it can go bad, and how people can steal money from clients, can steal money from other lawyers, and can even steal money from family members like Murdaugh, I guess, right? So it is still possible, but it's not unusual at all to have a bunch of family members involved in the firm.
This is civil law, a stark contrast from being thrust into the national spotlight as the presiding judge in the Parkland school shooting trial. The massacre happened on Valentine's Day 2018, killing 17 people and injuring 17 others. It remains one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history.
11 firearm magazines.
The very next day, Judge Scherer was randomly assigned to the Parkland school shooter's death penalty trial.
When you got notice that you were the judge, what did you think?
I was going through my docket and my secretary came in and she was like in a full panic. I need to talk to you. I need to talk to you. And I said, what's the matter? She said, you got to sign the Parkland case. And I said, okay. It was a big shock, but not so much. I don't know. I can't explain it. I had a feeling that case was coming to me.
The case.
So I think that was some genuine response from her, that she was a little bit surprised. Definitely her staff was shocked. They're like, oh gosh, it's coming to you. And she was like, oh, okay. And she didn't really know how to react. but she kind of always felt like the case was coming to her. So when these things get assigned to judges or new judges, as we see in the Murdaugh case, they notice. And it's kind of like when certain athletes say, oh, it's just another game if it's against a rival or something like that. Maybe it's not just another game or no, just another game or just another case to this judge.
This lasted 5 years, and with it came cameras that captured courtroom drama in real time before a live nationwide audience.
We have another day wasted. I honestly, I had never experienced a level of unprofessionalism in my career.
Some of the courtroom sparring, though, do you feel like it took away from the trial?
Well, anytime I had to, I guess, reprimand or censor an attorney, it was outside the presence of the jury.
But jurors.
So she says every time she sparred basically with the defense attorneys, it was outside the presence of the jury. And that was true for the most part for the long dialogue and the long back and forth. But there were some facial expressions, some comments, some huffing and puffing basically that was in the presence of the jury. And I respect this news reporter, journalist that went back and pulled clips and showed at least some of it was in front of the jury, and they could have potentially felt some of the tension, especially between the judge and the defense attorney, which again, when the Florida bar looks at this stuff, they do not like reprimanding judges. The Florida Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, there are a bunch of defense lawyers in Florida. They lose cases all the time. They lose trials all the time. They complain about judges all the time, not to this level. And that, I think, is kind of what is the interesting discussion around all of this and how judges can have their personal feelings, but in the courtroom, in front of the jury, it needs to be fair and impartial and straight down the middle, basically. Nobody's blaming her for hating Nicholas Cruz. Nobody's blaming her for thinking it should have gone another way. A lot of us felt that way during the trial. We thought it was going to be the death penalty, and it didn't end up coming the death penalty. A lot of us understood how some of the defense attorneys were very difficult to deal with. They would say one thing and do another. But judges have to deal with that in an appropriate manner, especially outside the presence of the jury. So she says all of her comments were made outside the presence of the jury, but then the interviewer puts this clip in.
Did see some of this heated.
An attorney, it was outside the presence of the jury.
But jurors did see some of this heated exchange.
Your Honor?
Yes.
At this time, the defense rests, other than putting in our records.
We're not playing chess. I mean, will you please take the jury back in?
Viewer.
And again, this was one of the things we talked about all the time, so we're not going to belabor it. Totally inappropriate. Totally inappropriate to do that. I don't care if the defense said they had 50 days left of trial. If they rest, it's over. They're done. So there's nothing to complain about. There's nothing to get bad about. You just say, okay, members of the jury, why don't you take a break while we put in these records? And that's it. You've got to remain composed. You've got to keep your composure. I understand how it may be annoying, how you feel like they're wasting your time, but it's your job. I can't tell you how many times I feel like a client or a staff member or somebody, an opposing counsel, or whatever, when I feel like they do something that's frustrating or that's wasting my time or making me do things twice. But guess what? I can't respond like that. You can't respond like that to people. You have to be professional. You have to realize it's part of your job. This is what you do. This is what you signed up to do. And I totally understand her frustration, but you cannot. If you want to react like that in front of jurors, you should not be a judge. And not everybody should be a judge. I get it. I get people that feel like that was a totally appropriate response. But then you're probably not meant to be a judge, and not everybody is. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, hey, I don't think I could be a judge.
Watch the rest play out between the judge and public defender Melissa McNeil.
I have been practicing in this county for 20 years.
You know what? I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear
Well,
it.
Judge, you're insulting me on the record in front of my client, and I believe that I should be able to.
Okay, you can do that later. You can make your record later, but you've been insulting me the entire trial. So blatantly taking your headphones off, arguing with me, storming out, coming late intentionally if you don't like my rulings. So quite frankly,
This has been long overdue.
There is a
And again, that back and forth to me, that's like sometimes when you have kids and it's like you want to get into certain arguments with your kids sometimes, but then others you're like, well, what is the point of me getting in the argument with them, right? I'm the decision maker. I tell them what to do. They're going to respond poorly sometimes. It's going to be a teachable moment. I've got to make sure I teach them to handle things with respect, but you don't need to get into the mud with them, right? Especially as a judge. If a lawyer wants to do things to you, you say, okay, are you done making your record? Okay. And we've seen judges do it. And you can be very fair and you can rule with an iron fist, but you do it in a way that is balanced. Like if you want to look at the Murdaugh judge, if you want to look at the Darrell Brooks judge, if you want to look, I mean, there's so many judges we can look at that keep it together the way a judge should. And it doesn't mean you roll over. It doesn't mean you do whatever the other side wants. Doesn't mean you can't tell them they have to do this or that. But you have to do it in the right way as a judge.
lot of talk surrounding some of the actions when it came to public defender Melissa McNeil. Do you feel that you unduly chastise the public defender?
You know, can I just have a minute?
Yeah, no, take your time.
So she needs to take a minute in response to this question, which I thought was really interesting. Yeah, Judge Carroll, again, same thing. And he got into it a little bit, but he was very fair and balanced and made sure everybody thought that and felt that way. But she had to literally pause when asked if she thought she went too hard on the public defender. And I'm going to back it up so we can repeat this question so you can know exactly what this question was. Bodie said, Peter, are the judges assigned randomly by calendar, by experience cases, or by what? It depends. So usually it can be by calendar. Sometimes they'll special appoint a judge based on experience, but this seemed like it was a random decision. Anne Marie Perry, do you agree with random assignment of cases, or do you think cases like this should be given to more experienced judges? I kind of agree with random assignment because you don't want to deal with a situation where you feel like they're giving all of the important cases or the big cases or the bad cases to one judge who does think things a certain way and maybe is bad for every defendant or too good for every defendant, as far as the public goes, too easy on crime. I like the random assignment. If they can't handle these cases, they probably shouldn't be a judge. They don't get moved up to the circuit court dealing with felonies and more serious cases or appointed there or elected there if they can't handle these kinds of cases. They can also have help. They can also recuse themselves if they don't feel like they have enough experience. So I don't really have a problem with random assignment of cases. Katie Girl, was the defense just unorganized? It could have been. They could have been playing games. It wouldn't be the first time a lawyer played games. It is what it is. It can be very annoying. You can be annoyed about it as a judge. Just don't let it come off like that. LA, can you fire a judge? No, but they can be removed from office. You can vote them out, or they can resign. Shark, in question, if the hugs had happened out of court or out of camera view, would we be talking about this? I think if anybody saw them, the public defender's office, any other criminal defense lawyer, I think we'd still be here. I think it went faster and bigger because the cameras were there and the public at large saw them. Sarah, maybe she's reflecting and thinking carefully. Could it be? Absolutely. Here's what I would say though, okay? She wasn't stopped on the street and bombarded with this interview. She planned to give this interview. They are at her office. She had to know this question was coming. I would think. I would be very surprised if she was shocked by any of these questions, yet she still needed a moment to compose herself before she could discuss if she thinks that she overstepped in dealing with the public defender.
Melissa McNeil, do you feel that you unduly chastise the public defender?
You know, can I just have a minute?
Yeah, no, take your time.
And I feel for her because this is not an easy thing to do. I don't think she had to do an interview. I would never have condemned her or thought less of her if she never took an interview. Thank you, Francis, for gifting 5 Lawyer You Know memberships. But I think that's the hard part is people that are saying, oh, you're going way too hard on her. You're being mean to her. Anybody felt like that. She's allowed to do that. Even she, that's the point of this, right? Even she feels like she at least borderline chastised the public defender too much openly, publicly, right? That's what I read into it, is at least maybe she felt like maybe it's borderline. It's not a harsh, quick, no, absolutely not, I'd do it again. Because that could have been her answer. And we've seen answers like that in interviews. Mike Doretto, did they bring up the victim impact statements? I don't think they did, but we're going to watch the whole thing together. Chow. Peter, would a handshake have been criticized as well? Was it only because it was a hug? I don't think a handshake would have been as criticized. And I think she should have just given a handshake to both sides if she was going to do that. She didn't need to do it right after the trial. A lot of times, most judges will compliment both sides after a trial. We've seen that together. That's what happens in most of my trials. Each side shakes hands at the end. If the judge wants to shake hands at the end, she'll shake hands usually. Like every trial I've done, I've gone up and shook the judge's hand. The other side has also shook the judge's hand. I shake the other lawyer's hand, win or loss. It's very normal to do things like that. This was outside the norm. Jeff, shout out from Coral Springs, Parkland's sister city. This has been so difficult for this community. I'm still amazed how pervasive shootings are. Every aspect of it is very impactful. I agree. And that's why it's so difficult to think about what she had to deal with. Nani Ann, thanks for explaining this process. Happy to. I mean, I think this stuff is really interesting. And these are questions you guys have had throughout the life of this case. So when this popped up, I thought, let's talk about it. Let's watch it together and let's talk about it.
Need like a minute to take a drink and to think about this.
Are you ready for the clap?
Scherer took a brief break, and when she came back,
So let's get to some of the moments in the trial that stick out in a lot of folks' head.
Okay.
Do you feel at any point that you unduly chastised the public defender, Melissa McNeil?
So there was a lot that was going on during that trial that I felt was extremely unprofessional and disrespectful, not only to the court, but to the families. As a judge, there's only certain tools that you have to address that type of disrespect. And, you know, did I handle it perfectly? Perhaps not, but I did what I thought needed to be done in order to maintain decorum and to keep that trial moving in a way that was fair to all parties.
Scherer says her
So again, I think she said, maybe I didn't handle it perfectly, which I think is fair. And I think that I respect her answer. I appreciate her not completely saying, no, I don't think there was anything wrong with what I did. And again, I think as far as her legal career goes, not that she cares at all what I have to say. I think that shows some reflection, some growth. I look forward to hopefully seeing her doing big things as a civil litigator now in her new firm that she's with her dad and other family members. And I hope she has a really great legal career. She also, I think, pointed out the fact that a lot of things were slung her way, middle finger comments. They were doing things that were inappropriate as well. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. I don't think anybody would say that she didn't have a right to be frustrated by what was happening with the defense team. The point is, she was the judge. And it's the same thing, like I said, with you and your kids. You are the parent, or I'll just speak for myself. I am the parent. And I think that's what it comes down to. That's why she's not disbarred. Nobody's saying she can't practice law, but she stepped down from the bench. And I think that was probably the right decision at the time. Maybe she'll do it again in the future. I think she should be open to that.
Her initial hesitation to discuss certain details stems from public reprimand from the Florida Supreme Court and an acknowledgement that her conduct during trial was at times not patient, dignified, or courteous. But critics argue some of the actions by the defense team were shocking.
And I agree. I agree with both. I agree both with what the Florida bar said in their public reprimand, but I also agree with some of the things that the defense said were shocking. Right? And I think both things can be true. LA said, Peter, do you think if the jury recommended the death penalty, it would be overturned because of her behavior? That would have been an incredibly interesting question. And I don't want to speak too much off the cuff, but I'm thankful that we didn't have to go down that road, because how brutal would that be if they rule for the death penalty and the victims felt vindicated, and then it gets overturned for something like this, and then we have to do it all over again. Everybody has to relive it again. Now, maybe some of the victims would say, I'd rather do that than him just be sitting in there for life. And I understand that. I don't know is the answer, but I definitely think it would have been an argument made by the defense team. Now, would the appellate court have said you brought this on yourself? Maybe, I don't know, but I think it definitely would have been something discussed in the appeal. Netwoman, thank you so much for gifting more and more memberships. I also heard John told me some stuff was delivered from you, gift baskets. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what it was because either it got mixed up with all of the holiday gift baskets coming into our office. I don't remember it specifically, but I'm going to try to look back and find it. So thank you, even though I'm not sure which one it was, but I hope to get to the bottom of it.
These people are upset about specific things that have gone on from that table, like shooting the middle finger up at this court and laughing and joking. Ms. McNeil, be quiet.
And then there was this polarizing moment.
Judge, I can assure you that if they were talking about your children, you would definitely notice it.
You need to sit down right now. You're out of line. In fact, you're excused. To try to threaten my children and bring up my children is inappropriate.
Looking back on that, do you still feel that your child was threatened?
So I'm very protective of my daughter, and
nobody would ever blame her for that. Nobody blamed her for that at the time. What they were saying is she failed to see the analogy the defense was making and kind of made their point with her reaction when somebody did say something about her kid. And I think that's the point, is we all feel that way about our children. That's what the defense team was trying to say. And, you know, whatever you think about their client, whatever you think about defense attorneys in general, I get it. But she did take it too far as how a judge should act. And I think this has been confirmed by the Florida Bar, who's the governing body on judges in Florida, with their public reprimand.
looking back, I may have overreacted. In other words, maybe that's not what the attorney meant, but I don't feel it's ever appropriate to look at a judge and say, well, if this was your kid, what, I mean, that is just so far out of line that.
I completely agree with her, and I'm going to back it up because I kept stopping it just so you can hear it all in one segment. But I completely 100% agree with her. But you know who else's kids you should not be able to talk about? Attorneys' kids, prosecutors, defense attorneys. You should not be able to talk about, threaten, demean children of people doing their job in the courtroom, regardless of how you feel about them. And I think that was the analogy and point they were trying to get across. And I know it's a touchy subject, and I understand people, their feeling about the monster Nicholas Cruz, as was said in the human resource officer or school resource officer trial that we watched together. He is a monster. He did this, and it was horrible. But again, not what this is about. Attorneys' kids, judges' kids. I really think that if we all thought about that and tried to clear our mind, we would all agree on that. And we don't all agree on much. Rocky, paying a late fee. Thanks for everything. Appreciate it. Dreamscape. Peter, do you think the defense was trying to push buttons? If they were trying to push buttons, I think maybe more the prosecutor's buttons than the judge. I do not think that defense attorney there was trying to push her buttons. I really do not. I think he was trying to fight to stop people from personally attacking the defense attorneys. That's what I think. But again, feel free to disagree. So I'm going to back it up a little so we can kind of hear this in its entirety again.
Joking, Miss McNeil, be quiet.
And then there was this polarizing moment.
Judge, I can assure you that if they were talking about your children, you would definitely notice it.
You need to sit down right now. You're out of line. In fact, you're excused. To try to threaten my children and bring up my children is inappropriate.
Looking back on that, do you still feel that your child was threatened?
So I'm very protective of my daughter, and looking back, I may have overreacted. In other words, maybe that's not what the attorney meant, but I don't feel it's ever appropriate to look at a judge and say, well, if this was your kid, what, I mean, that is just so far out of line that.
So even she said, maybe I overreacted. Maybe that's not what the defense attorney meant. I'm pretty confident the defense attorney himself was not threatening Judge Scherer's kids, right? I mean, I'm pretty confident that that's what that was. And I understand her visceral reaction. I may have had the same reaction, right? If you start talking about my kids. So I understand that. And again, I think this is part of her understanding what went wrong and growing from it and learning from it.
I will tell you, he found the right button to push. I try to maintain a level of, calmness and take a deep breath when somebody's trying to sort of bait me. Bringing up my daughter, I did lose my temper. And just to put it in context, although I don't know that that's what was meant by it, but as a career criminal prosecutor, I've had 3 or 4 defendants get out of prison and come to my courtroom. They find out I'm a judge, they come to my courtroom, they sit in the back. And I think my mind was going too fast when I heard that. And I thought, well, now everybody who's watching knows I have a daughter. So anybody who wants to sort of get to me can bring her up. But long story short, do I think that's what he meant? Probably not. Do I think that he was inappropriate? Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think I disagree with that assessment. I do think 2 things that were interesting came out there. So she talked about her past experience as a career criminal prosecutor, which that's how she identifies herself in her head. Again, a lot of judges are career prosecutors beforehand, but they need to put that behind them and they need to be fair and impartial and see things balanced. And secondly, she said she agrees that she does not think probably that's what he meant, but she thought it was inappropriate. And again, I probably agree with her there. Love, thank you so much for gifting 20 memberships. Oh, one other thing that she said is that she lost her temper. And I do think that's another thing that judges really have to guard against. I understand it. I can lose my temper as well. Sometimes I can be short fused. So I understand it. But when it comes out in things like this, that's how we get down the road like we got with this judge, unfortunately.
And that was just some of our conversation. For the first time ever, the former judge also explained why she hugged members of the prosecution once that trial was over. Take a look. Do you think it was just the hug, or it was a series of events that landed you where you are now?
Well, you know what? I don't know. It was like I was in a lose-lose situation with the defense. They filed the first motion to disqualify me when I was on the case for 2 days. And then they filed 3 and 4 others throughout the course. They were always hitting me with motions to disqualify, sometimes with.
So one thing there is interesting. So she talks about how all the defense was trying to disqualify her from the jump on the case. And this is why I talked about it with same thing with Judge Newman when Murdaugh's team tried to disqualify him. You can't take that personally, because if you start taking it personally, then maybe your reactions start to become more annoyed or frustrated or more short fused with the defense. So you have to be really careful to guard against that. It seems like the defense maybe was trying to push her buttons. Maybe they were trying to push her buttons, and it seems like they did hit a few. And that's really unfortunate. Again, I don't condone that. That's not how I practice law. That's not how I hope anybody practices law. It's annoying. It's annoying to be on the other side when the other side is trying to push the judge's buttons or your buttons. But as a judge, you have to be above it. And I know people in the chat are going to think that's unfair. I know people who are in the chat are going to roll their eyes at that. But the way the legal community looks at judges, you have to be above that sort of thing. You have to.
Allegations that were just completely false. By 3 and 4 others.
So this I thought was interesting too. So listen to her verbiage here about when she's talking about all the motions to disqualify against her.
Of course, they were all disqualified, sometimes with allegations that were just completely false.
So I don't know if that was just her choice of words, but she said sometimes with allegations that were completely false. So then maybe other times they were true. I don't know. And maybe she's talking. I don't know. I just thought that was interesting.
And I think when you listen to her, you can see the pauses, you can see the reflection. She's walking us through what she was thinking and look at it after stepping down from the bench.
And somebody who watched against it to begin, because it seemed to me that she was being baited and that the defense was very strategic in what they were saying and how they were acting.
Well, and that's what she says. That's what her family members say. In fact, when she got the reprimand and the charges against her for being impartial, they were ready to fight this. And she tells me exactly why she decided not to fight it. And it's a key piece of information that will be very interesting to you. And again, this is a judge who really took, from what I could tell in the interview, her job very seriously, and she was trying to do the best for everyone involved.
So yeah, I don't disagree with that she was trying to do the very best for everyone involved. That is a really interesting point that I didn't think of before, is that her and her family thought this was very unfair and considered fighting it. Well, we know she has a family of litigators. Her dad has a big firm here that we just looked at, and they could handle this issue, and that would have been very interesting as well. But I personally think she made the right decision in that could end up being a lose-lose for her. I feel like there were some things in that interview that make her more likable and understandable for what she was dealing with, and realizing that maybe she should have reacted a little bit differently here and there. And I think kind of how she put it is kind of how I felt through the trial, is that stuff crossed the line probably a little bit too much. She admitted a couple things that were just not right. And to me, I think she would act differently in the future based on her answers. You guys let me know what you think. Carolyn, I know I'm late, but Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Yes. Happy New Year to everybody in the chat. Debbie, I think I'm seeing symptoms of PTSD that finally came to the surface for this judge. There are no support backups in place for these people. So certain jurisdictions do have support in place. We saw that in the Las Vegas judge. They have counselors they can go to, even paid for by the state or the jurisdiction that they work in sometimes. So hopefully there is something for her. If not, I'm sure she has the means to get it at this point. She is a private practicing attorney, and I hope she does get any help that she may need, although I don't necessarily know that I see PTSD, but I do see reflection and growth when you are dealing with something very difficult that nobody can prepare you for, that's different than anything you've handled in your life. You never know how you're going to deal with it. Madita, no, not more likable. She didn't get it. And again, I understand that we are going to disagree on this and the nuances of how we see this. But I always hope for people to be redeemable and rehabilitatable. And I hope that for her and for everybody else involved in all of these cases and issues that we deal with. All right. We are about to wind this down. I am going to answer. So somebody asked, didn't she already retire? She didn't retire. She just stepped down from the bench, and now she's a practicing attorney again. So after this video, we're going to automatically redirect you into an updated video on Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt's sentencing, as a bunch of you sent me a statute in Utah that may limit what their potential max sentence could be. So stick around. We're going to read through that entire statute together and go through the exceptions to that rule and where that rule comes into play, and if it could affect future crimes for Jodi Hildebrandt based on past actions that people have brought out before her. So make sure you stick around. In just a couple minutes, we're going to go to that. A lot of people, I think, are giving some interesting information here. Some people saying she seems too emotional. Some people saying that she had too short of a fuse. Some people saying the defense attorneys were totally out of line. Temperament not fit for the bench. Some people just not liking our justice system at all. I have not seen any sentencing update on this, but if we get it, send it to me on Instagram and Twitter, and I will check it out. Paige said she thinks female judges get more harsh criticism than male judges, of which there are many bad judges. I agree. Bad judges have no gender. They could be either. I've seen it from both. I think one of our favorite judges on the channel has been a female as well. So maybe one that's gotten the most scrutiny and the most praise. We're both females on the channel. A lot of males mixed in between. I 100% agree with this, Elizabeth. You got to give people a chance to do better. And that's what I'm hoping is coming. I never get redirected. I don't know if anybody knows how to turn on whatever the redirect feature is. Go ahead and throw that in the stream now. Make sure you guys go ahead and like the video too before we end here. I agree, Beck. She definitely seemed emotional about it. And again, it's probably frustrating her. I am sure. And I feel like if I was in her place, I would probably be feeling to myself, somebody who loves justice and fights for justice and wants to do it right. I bet inside of her, she wanted to be like, those defense attorneys deserved every bit of what I said to them and more and worse. They were despicable. That's probably how she's feeling. So it's hard for her to admit that maybe she showed too much, either in front of the jury, in front of the cameras, whatever it may have been, that is unbecoming of a judge, even if it's not unbecoming of just a normal human being. So I do think that could be difficult. I do feel like that could be difficult. I think this absolutely would have happened to a male judge if he would have said the things that she did in front of the jury, hugged the prosecutors at the end. Absolutely, I do think it would have happened to a male judge. I've seen male judges get recused. I've seen male judges get publicly reprimanded. And maybe she would have never stepped out of line if the defense would have acted more professional. Maybe that's true. But sometimes the person who hits second gets punished. Was that the saying? Something like that. Oh, yeah. Judge A was a stud. All right, let me see if there's anything else here before we take off. I think that's pretty much it. Netwoman is going to give 10 memberships on the way out. Thank you so much, Netwoman. Hopefully you guys turn that on and grab a membership before we start the next video. Don't forget to hit the like button on the way out of here. We'll be talking to you guys very soon. I'll try to get into the chat of the next video. It should automatically redirect you. Until next time, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast with new seasons dropping every quarter. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, The Lawyer You Know.